Many of you know Janice Dean from Fox News Channel, where she's a well-liked and much respected meteorologist. But she's also written several books. The latest is called Make Your Own Sunshine, a real celebration of hope. Stay with us. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Msgr Jim Lisante, and Fox News Channel's Janice Dean joins me now. Janice currently serves as senior meteorologist for Fox News Channel. Prior to joining Fox News in 2004, Janice served as news editor and entertainment reporter for Imus in the Morning, which aired on WFAN New York and was also simulcast nationally on MSNBC. Janice lost both of her in-laws last year to COVID. They were in separate elder care facilities. And since then, Janet has been using her platform to speak out against New York Governor Andrew Cuomo and his executive order to put COVID-positive patients into nursing homes. She says she wants answers for her family and all the others who lost loved ones. And Janice's latest book is called Make Your Own Sunshine. The subtitle is Inspiring Stories of People Who Know How to Find Light in Dark Times. In her book, she writes about finding light in life's toughest moments and highlights stories of kindness during the dark times of the pandemic. Janice Dean is determined to remain positive and grateful despite the losses she and her family endured, and she hopes her book will encourage others to count their blessings and to be grateful for every single day. Janice is married to Sean Newman, and together they are parents to sons Matthew and Theodore. She's here with us today to talk about her life, her career, her family, and the faith and values that matter the most to her. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome to Personally Speaking, Fox News meteorologist and author, Janice Dean. Janice, thanks for coming on our show. And for our listeners and watchers around the country, the name of the book we're talking about is Make Your Own Sunshine, but I love the subtitle, Inspiring Stories of People Who Find Light in Dark Times. And Janice, that's where I want to start, dark times for a moment. Everybody knows, we talk about this in church all the time. One of my favorite movies is Moonstruck, and I love the line where Olympia Dukakis says to her husband, no matter what you're doing, you're still going to die just like everybody else. So we all know that we're going to one day go home to God. But most of us aren't looking forward to that time when we find out the path it may or may not take. Your diagnosis when you were facing health challenges, do you remember what your first response was to the news? Was it a response of hope? Or was it a gloomier response? How did Janice first respond to the challenge of, we're all limited physically, we're all going to someday have to go home to God, but we'd rather not start that journey too soon? How did you respond?
It was a very dark time. I have to be honest with you. And a lot of it was because I didn't know much about multiple sclerosis. Mm-hmm. I didn't have anybody in my family that had it. The first vision I had was someone in a wheelchair. So I thought immediately that was probably what was going to happen to me. And so that was really scary, obviously. Yeah. It was a very dark time for many weeks because I was 35. I was I had moved to New York City. I had the greatest job in the world. Yeah. I had a boyfriend who I adored, and everything was going great, and then it was like the car stopped completely. And so I felt very sorry for myself, and I didn't tell many people. I had to take quite a bit of time off work. I had to tell my boss, who was very good about it, actually. He said, whatever you need, we're here for you, however much time you need to take off to figure this out. And then I also realized that there was someone that was close to me that had this diagnosis. And that was my friend Neil Cavuto, who I work with at Fox. Right. He was there from the very beginning, and he was very public with his diagnosis. So my boss at the time said to me, you should reach out to Neil and talk to him. And he will help you in more ways than you could probably imagine. So I was lucky to have someone I could literally talk on the phone with and then go see him in his office. And when I did that, he stopped everything. He turned the TV off. He brought a chair up to mine. He brought Kleenex. And he just listened. He just listened. And at the end of me telling him what's going to happen to my career, is my boyfriend still going to love me? Am I still going to be worthy?
Yeah.
And he said, you're going to be fine. You're going to be great. And I'm here to tell you that as someone who has gone through the same diagnosis.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie to you. It's not going to be easy. And this is one of those illnesses where, anything can happen, at any time, really. But it will also make you appreciate each and every day as well.
Yeah.
It will also make you realize how blessed you are. And at the time, I didn't really get it, but now I do.
I hear you, Janice. Over the years, when I've done as guest appearances on many Fox shows, people say to me on Long Island where I live, they'll say, who do you like the best? And I think they expect me to name all the megastars. And I say, without a doubt, Neil Cavuto, because he's the real deal. He what you see is what you get. He's genuine. He's authentic. He's got a heart of gold. I said, and he takes his Christian faith and he actually lives it. And I'm just so glad he was there for you. Janice, let me ask you, for our listeners and watchers around the country who know that, MS is not a great thing to have, but may not even know what it is. What is MS?
It's when your body is attacking its central nervous system, your brain and your spine. And we don't quite know why. We don't know why this is happening in our bodies, but essentially, I'm being attacked. Okay. And the way they diagnose MS is they do it through MRIs. That technology will show whether or not you have lesions on your brain and your spine. And that will show that, there's, little wounds on your brain and on your spine. And that gives you an indication that, I think about it as, your brain and your spine as almost like, when you have a lamp and you have the plug, and all of the wiring that goes through the lamp into the outlet.
Right.
So if you take away the coating of that, the nerves or the wiring gets frayed, and sometimes the messages don't get through properly. That's kind of what MS is. So the messages are not getting through properly, the channels that are in our bodies to provide that. And so it can affect our vision. It can affect our walking. It can be very painful. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and it feels like I've got like electrical shocks going through my legs. That's just a reminder that, there's a fault, there's faults in my system. But the medications are getting better. The therapies are getting better. I'm on something that once a month I get an infusion. And that's been life-changing for me, because in the beginning I was giving myself an injection every day.
Right.
And that was kind of a constant reminder that there was something wrong with me. Whereas now I go in and I get my infusion and then I feel like, I'm living my life.
Right. Janice Dean's our guest. Her book is Making Your Own Sunshine. Make Your Own Sunshine. I want to ask you, you talked about one of the challenges when you got your diagnosis was, have this great relationship and dating the right guy. I want to talk a little bit about Sean, your husband. Every weekend when I do weddings, my way of learning how to preach better is by saying to the couples, do me a favor and write me an essay. There's a billion people out there you could have married. You chose this one. If you had been challenged to do the same thing, why is Sean the one for you?
Oh, that's such a wonderful question. I'm so blessed to have met this man. I feel like our meeting was predestined. I truly believe that I was meant to meet him, have children with him, and him be my partner for the rest of my life. For many years, I always thought that I wasn't going to meet that right person. I dated, a bunch of wonderful people, but we just, things happened and it just wasn't meant to be. With Sean, we began our relationships as friends. I met him in New York. It was a blind date that was set up from a girlfriend of mine who met him on her honeymoon while she was in Hawaii. It's a long, wonderful story, but, I had just moved to New York and I didn't know anyone. And Leanne and Tony had gone on their honeymoon in Hawaii, and Sean was there by himself. It was a dream to go there and surf in Hawaii. It had just happened after 9/11. My husband is a firefighter, and he'd gone through that terrible time. And so he went to Hawaii as kind of a way to repair himself, to be in nature, do something that he loved to do. And he met my friends Leanne and Tony on a hike one day when the surf was too high for him to go out.
Yeah.
And she was the one who said, you have to meet this man. I don't know. There's something about him. He's really kind. He's a firefighter. He lives in New York. And at the time I was like, Leanne, the last thing I need right now is a boyfriend. And she said, well, why do you have to think of him as a boyfriend? Why can't it just be somebody you're meeting in New York as a friend?
Right.
So that's how our relationship started. He was just a good friend to me. Wow. And so, he was my best friend for a long time. And it just happened very organically, I guess. And he was there with me truly in the good times and the bad, and took me who I was. I mean, someone who was diagnosed, who he didn't know that path we were about to go on. But I remember one of the most important things he said to me was, I'm not afraid of this. I'm not afraid to go through this with you. So,
How good
in
is
many
this
ways.
guy? I think he's a keeper. Sounds like he's a keeper.
I think so too. Me too.
When you say this great friendship you two share, now I'm doing a lot of anniversaries for couples married 50 and 60 years. And I say to them, what held you together? And no one ever says good looks or money or sex, but they do say, I was able to marry my best friend. It sounds so like true. You guys have that, which is the best. Now, you and Sean did something else amazing to me, in that I think one of the bravest things anybody can do is choose to bring forth life. And what's interesting is you've done this and at the same time dealing with health challenges. But let's talk a little bit about Matthew and Theodore. Do you have any idea, because I know parents and grandparents listen to and watch a show like this a lot, any idea how to pass on the values that mean the most to you and Sean to these children? Is there a right or wrong way to do it?
Just be there for them, love them, make them part of your experiences. When Sean and I go on vacation, the kids come with us. That we were just planning something. We're going to go to Saratoga next month. And someone said, well, are you guys going to go together, like as just a couples trip? And I said, oh my gosh, no, my family, my boys have to come with us. And listen, that's not to say that that's not important to have time with your spouse alone.
Right.
But I just, my boys are my life. They're my family. We both just adore them so much and feel so blessed to have them in my life. I never thought motherhood was going to be a part of my life, to be quite honest with you. For many years, I was one of those people. It was like career, challenges. What do I do next? And to be able to have these boys in my life, again, sort of resets everything. What is the purpose of my life? Yeah. The purpose of my life is to be a mother and a wife and a good person. And and the rest of it is just a cherry on top.
Yeah, I like that too. I want to ask you too, with the name, I'm intrigued by it. Matthew, gift of God, but Theodore is not one you see a lot these days. And I was thinking of the big statue of Teddy Roosevelt outside of the Museum of Natural History. Now they're going to take the statue down. Tell me how you came up with the name Theodore.
You say Theodore Roosevelt, and I think that was an influence. Okay. We were just looking through names one day, and I love, I love the name Ted. It's very, I'm not sure why, but so we looked at that Ted, and then that of course comes from Theodore, and Theodore just was such a strong name that wasn't, on the baby list of the top 50 or whatever every year, right? Yeah. And he is such a Theodore. Now the kids call him Teddy, which I love too. That's really adorable. Right. But but I do believe the influence was Theodore Roosevelt as such a strong name. And you mentioned that about the Museum of Natural History. we used to live around that area, and I used to, stroll my kids around there all the time. And when Theodore was old enough to talk, I showed him Theodore Roosevelt, and I showed him the nameplate. I said, what is that? What is that name? And he looked at it. He said, Theodore. I said, yes, he's a very famous man. You have a very famous name. So,
well, I love Theodore Roosevelt because he broke the monopolies, and I'm hoping we can do the same now, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or all the rest of them who are, or Amazon, any number of large companies that seem to be controlling our life. Let me ask you, Janice, too, because, you have such a positive vision. It comes across in your book. Growing up, family of origin, are they the people who planted the positive seeds in you, or is this something you've come to on your own?
I think if you ask my mom, I've always had kind of a sunny attitude ever since I was little. I used to go out in the neighborhood and interview kids on the street, which I think is, again, my career was probably predestined back then. And I just had a good attitude about things. I think that is probably something that you're born with. Yeah. But, it's what you go through in life, too, that reinforces that attitude, right? So I feel like all of the challenges that I have gone through have reinforced that reason to be positive, right? You can have periods where you feel down and you don't want to get out of bed. But I do have that glass half full. I am. And maybe it is because I have an idea that God has already chosen my path, right?
Yeah.
So if we accept that, it makes life a little bit easier, right?
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I'm going to agree with you on that one.
I know you are.
Well, now, one of the challenges in your life I want to talk about is you lost both your in-laws to the experience of COVID, and that would be bad enough. And I want to talk about how you helped Sean and the children cope with that. But you also, there's a political dimension to that, and that you've taken on this massive bully of a governor of ours, Andrew Cuomo, in terms of holding him accountable. I have to believe that some people around you said you're really wading into a very, very challenging battle here. So where's the courage come from to say, I'm going to hold the governor of New York accountable, not just in general for the death of innocent people, but specifically for my two much loved in-laws?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. And at the very beginning, when we lost Sean's parents, Mickey and Dee, my husband didn't want me to publicize this. He didn't want, he's a very private person. He encourages my career and encourages what I do for a living, but his personal life and his family are very private. Yeah. But when we were seeing these reports about the March 25th order putting COVID positive patients into nursing homes, and how the governor wasn't really talking about it on television, or at least he wasn't being asked those questions.
Right.
And I was seeing this and going, well, we didn't know about that March 25th order. Why didn't we know that they were putting infected patients into elder care facilities? And then when I also read that he wasn't counting those that died in the hospital as nursing home deaths, like my mother-in-law, she got COVID in her assisted living residence, died in the hospital, but her number doesn't count because the governor decided he wasn't going to count those. And we now know that the reason he didn't do that was to bring down those numbers so that he didn't look guilty or look like he was doing a bad job. Yeah. So I remember, I was sharing this with my husband and saying, this is not getting any media coverage at all. And this is something that should be one of the biggest stories in New York, if not the pandemic. The losses that we have in the nursing homes, it's like an epidemic. And so I remember I was texting with one of my bosses, and I also was texting with my friend Tucker Carlson. And I said, this is a story, Tucker. And he said, you're right, it is. And anytime you want to come on and talk about it, I'm here for you. Oh. So I finally said to my husband, I would like to talk about this because they deserve justice. If there's something wrong, if the governor has done something wrong, then we need to find out. He can't just get away with this.
Yeah.
So that's how that all began. And here we are a year later. And, thankfully, there are many investigations that are going on, but he still continues to lead. He still will blame everyone else except him, never taken any accountability, never said, I'm sorry for your loss, never has met with any of the family members. But I have to believe we're on the side of the angels. And I believe at some point justice will prevail.
I think you're right. I hope you're right anyway. And it's troubling to me that even, again, from Long Island, where I'm from, that people will say, they'll talk much more about his sexual indiscretions. And I'll say, that's bad. But I said, even worse is people died because of decisions that he made. And for a while, it was being swept under the rug. And people like you have raised the issue, so it won't go away. And it shouldn't go away. This is just one more of the great tragedies of the COVID pandemic. And it should be, for the sake of those folks, something we're accounting somebody for, including the governor. But go back, if you would, to my other question. When you have a husband who loses both his parents, is there a particular way you found to help him and the children with the whole issue of bereavement?
Well, that's a tough, broad question, but I believe faith is a big part of our lives. We are Catholic, and our church really rallied around us. Our community was wonderful. Even parishes across the country, I would get word that, a church in Nebraska was honoring Mickey and Dee in one of the services. I got sent wonderful prayer cards from people. I just felt, that's the time when you feel close to God. And there were many times where I prayed for many reasons. We weren't able to see his parents because we were in quarantine and we weren't able to see them or have wakes or funerals or last rites. Right. So I would pray many times that there would be a kind person that held their hands and when they took their last breath. In terms of my children, we've always been open and honest. They believe in God. They know that Mickey and Dee are up there in heaven and they're together. And there is a solace in that they are together. And so, I think those are the times when you look to God to help you. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. There are many times that I remembered that and said that at night.
Janice is in her book, Make Your Own Sunshine. She talks in many, many ways about those who are heroic through this experience, and particularly those on the front lines of the medical community. I'm reminded, Janice, of a young lady named Francie who said to me, she a nurse in an emergency room, she got COVID, and I thought that would be enough to send her home and stay home. But 2 weeks after she got better, she was back in the front lines there. And she said to me, it was so heartbreaking to her that a young man, 28, who died of COVID should die alone. And I said, no, he didn't die alone. You were holding his hand. It goes to your point that there are so many people who were true heroines and heroes in this whole thing. You said in another place, and for our listeners and watchers, obviously I want them to get hold of Make Your Own Sunshine. But in one interview you said, losing my husband's parents brought me closer to faith. It brought me closer to our church and our community. I taught my children that their grandparents go to heaven. And I know that sometimes when horrible things happen to people we love, it can go that way where you have a positive spirit. But, many people, too, can get to a point where they're just so disappointed in God for not saving the people they love. Did you or Sean go through a period at all of wondering, why us?
I don't think so. I mean, of course, we went through the grieving process and said, why this tragedy? But it happened to so many others. I now have a family of friends that went through the same thing we did, and they brought us into our lives, and I truly feel their spirit with me all the time. For
our listeners and watchers around the country, we're talking to Janice Dean. We're talking about her book, Make Your Own Sunshine. We know her from Fox News, but I want people to get hold of this book. Promise my last question, Janice. If I, on a weekend, give a homily and 9 out of 10 people say, I really love that homily, and one guy walks out the door and he says, I thought that stunk, I'm going to all day be focused on the negative guy, which I shouldn't, but I do. What did I do wrong? How did I turn that person off? I mention that because if you go online, I mean, 99% of the people who read your books love them, say they're inspired by them, they're filled with hope because of them. But you'll see one troll out there who will take a shot at you. And I'm just thinking to myself, is Janice Dean like me? Does she let that one negative person get to her? Or is there a way not to let that happen?
Mute them. That's the best invention, and you can also block them, right? If you're talking about social media, but mute is a beautiful thing because they don't know that you've kind of like taken their voice, right? They can yell at you all day long, but you don't hear them because you've muted them. But I understand that. And I do take those to heart. Sometimes criticism can be good, right? Because it makes you think, okay, well, what did I do wrong? How can I be better? But I don't, and maybe that's just, being in a business where you have to have a tough skin and people are always going to criticize you for something.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, there is more goodness out there and more positive feedback than the negative feedback. And so I have to, remember that. And I do remember that. For the most part, I believe that people are good. But there are always going to be those, the ones that are going to be, they're going to criticize. But you also have to remember that those people, the ones that criticize, there must be something in their life that makes them feel like they've got to lash out at somebody else, especially a stranger.
I want to thank Janice Dean for being with us. And Janice, for the folks around the country and the world who listen to this program, the best way to get hold of the book, Make Your Own Sunshine, how do they find the book?
Well, it's everywhere. It's, you can go online. I like the independent bookstores, of course, to help them, the small businesses. They have a special place in my heart. But also, this is a book that is meant to share. So if you buy it, I encourage you to give it to someone else.
Right.
And that's the way to spread sunshine.
And I want to encourage pastors around the country, Catholic and otherwise, people are looking for something material to give their parishioners. This is a great resource, a positive spirit. Janice, keep it up. You're helping us so much to crawl out of the negativity in this world and see the positive, the good, the hopeful. And voices like yours are a true gift, a true grace. And we're so grateful for you. Thank you, Janice.
My pleasure. I hope we can do it again.
As we end today's program, I want to thank you all for being with us. If you have any questions or comments, you can send them to me at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. To listen to past episodes of Personally Speaking with Msgr Jim Lisante, you go to YouTube and search under Personally Speaking with Msgr Jim Lisante. Don't forget, please, to click the like and subscribe buttons. You can also get past episodes by going to www.closeencounteredtv.com and clicking on the radio button at the top of the page. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer, Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Jandovitz. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.